The Financial Conduct Authority, one of the most powerful of the financial regulators in this country, disgraced itself last week when it released a report which suggested no politicians had been debanked, quote, primarily for his or her political views. But the report bizarrely didn't look at Nigel Farage's case, the highest profile one of all. Well, perhaps one of the most stark revelations of the whole debanking affair is that it showed how ridiculous corporate wokery is. NatWest, whilst it indulged in the sinister rhetoric of diversity and inclusion, proved that it had no regard for diversity and was quite keen on exclusion. In scenarios such as this, one looks to the regulator for help, specifically the FCA. That's its job. But lo and behold, it came to pass that the FCA, along with the PRA, has proved themselves to be as much part of the problem as the NatWest. Yesterday, it issued new diversity and inclusion targets for banks and insurers on the type of people it ought to employ, as well as developing a diversity and inclusion strategy and to collect, to report and to disclose data against the regulator's targets. This is the death of meritocracy. To get on in the city, you will now have to be a quota filler, and firms will face extra costly bureaucracy and additional committees and form filling to show that they're politically correct rather than financially competent. Well, I'm now joined by Narinder Kaur, who is something of a fan of diversity in the workplace. Narinder, why do you think all this workplace wokery is such a good idea?
Because I think every report has shown that diversity works. It's productive for any company, and it's vital for a community or any organisation to reflect their customer base. Why do you think it's not important, Jacob, actually should be the question?
Well, the issue here is that diversity and inclusion got Nigel Farage debanked, didn't it? It was exclusion, because they didn't like his political opinions.
We don't know if that's the case. I think that sometimes this meritocracy word is often used as a smokescreen in progressing diversity in a workplace. Would you agree with that? Because I feel like this, why can meritocracy and diversity not go hand in hand? It's almost as if you get diversity, therefore you're somehow getting less of a better person. And I think that's wrong.
If you have a meritocracy, you will get diversity automatically. You don't need to have a diversity and inclusion strategy. A true meritocracy does not need a diversity and inclusion strategy by definition.
But unfortunately, that doesn't always exist in the workplace. And Nikhil Rathi, the CEO of the FCA, has said in this proposal that actually data suggests that it's not working. What they're doing at the moment, it's not working. They are not retaining the best talent. They are not getting the best talent. And diversity is absolutely vital for their profits, actually, for the bank to do better. Remember, Jacob, this isn't about them just being nice people, woke people. At the end of the day, this is a business and they want to make more money.
That's right. The banks want to make more money. The financial sector wants to make more money, and therefore it wants to employ the best people. It doesn't need another layer of bureaucracy forced on it by the FCA, which is useless anyway, to make it employ the best people. They're very driven in the financial sector to make money.
Yes, but they do need this extra layer, actually, because this proposal and everything that goes with it, because it's shown that what they're doing so far isn't working. That customer base, everything is about customer base, shows that you have to reflect what's going on in your organisation to what's going on outside. And why would you have a board of, say, 10 middle-class white men coming to the same decision again and again and again, when actually diversity proves that when you have, women there, people of colour there, disabled people there, actually they come to better decisions for the community as a whole and for their customer base. You can't just have 10...
Surely the evidence is that you do best if you pick the best people, and that if you are completely blind to these characteristics, and that setting targets by the FCA is an appalling approach. It's reverse discrimination.
No, I completely disagree with that, Jacob. And I think you're being blind to the truth of the matter here, that actually these people don't always get that level playing field. We don't get our foot in the door. My son wants to go into banking. I know just by the very his name on a CV, he won't get to the top of that pile. And he's had disadvantages in that other people haven't. And I include working class white males as well. They don't get the advantages in life. And it's not a level playing field, Jacob.
Well,
you must understand that.
Thank you very much, Narinder. I've given you the last word on this occasion, but next time you come into the studio, I might have the last word for myself. I'm now joined by my brilliant panel, barrister and former Tory MP Jerry Hayes, an author, broadcaster, arguer with Miss Dewberry, Michael Crick.
Oh, yes.
That was quite exciting. I hope you'll be a bit better behaved today.
Well, I hope you'll be better behaved.
I will. I'll certainly do my best.
But you're always courteous and...
Well, let's not rehash that. I probably shouldn't have mentioned it.
Well-informed.
But isn't the FCA and the PRA getting this wrong, that the financial services sector is the sector that is most driven by pure merit because it's what makes it the most money?
Well, I came into this studio thinking this was bonkers, but I've just listened to Narinder, and actually I'm reminded of the appalling things that have gone on in the past and the appalling ways in which people from certain backgrounds have had a wonderful, risen up the system in life, and other people from other backgrounds haven't. And like her, I agree that one of the reasons why we need diversity in all our institutions is to get the best out of people. And if you say, I mean, for instance, when I joined ITN as a trainee 43 years ago, and I only learnt this in Edward Sturton's book the other day, they had a policy at ITN of excluding anybody from the traineeship who hadn't gone to Oxford or Cambridge. So I was the beneficiary of an appalling discrimination against people from other universities. And I'm sure the same has happened with women, with people from ethnic minority backgrounds, people who are gay, and that shouldn't happen. Now, in this particular case, I don't think it should be the FCA that's doing it. They should concentrate on pursuing crooked bankers, which they're not very good at. Yeah. And no wonder Private Eye calls them the financial cock-up authority or the fundamentally complicit authority. Get on with what you're meant to be doing rather than trying to expand your empire. But it is an important issue, and Narinder has made a lot of very powerful points.
Jerry,
I don't think she has, actually, with the greatest respect to
Oh, no,
Narinder.
don't give me that phrase. You don't have to give me respect.
You've got it completely wrong, Crick. And the reason is people get muddled with equality and equality of opportunity. We can't make everyone equal. Yes, life isn't a level playing field for anybody, but give people the opportunity to do well and pick the best people. But this is discrimination. Young white boys, in school, they're falling behind.
That's what worries me. It becomes a means of discrimination.
Yes.
It also becomes a means of trying to pretend that other failings in the state, in the system, haven't happened. So we're not educating people as well as we should.
No.
There are problems with our state education system. Now, if you make it up by saying banks must have quotas, but that's not the answer. The answer is to improve the education system, isn't it?
Well, I think that whatever you do, it should be, you shouldn't just be picking on one sector, the City of London, and saying, and using their regulator to impose rules that you're not imposing on the rest of society. But I do think that if the state has to think carefully about this and certainly encourage practices that encourage diversity, and also you've got to be careful what you mean by diversity. For instance, in the past we've used the term BAME, and without...
We can't use it now.
Without and what has happened is a lot of Asians have done really well, but a lot of black people haven't. And so you've got to put more thought into it. But I think the intentions are good, but it's not the FCA that should be doing it.
But look what's happened in American universities, where they've actively discriminated against people of Chinese background, people from Jewish background, which is so disgraceful because they have had what they call positive discrimination, but positive discrimination is still discrimination.
But there are things you can do, like when you're, if you're the board of a bank or the nominations committee of the board of a bank, and you think, right, well, we've got 10 men on our board, shouldn't we be putting a little bit more effort into encouraging some women to apply? I'm not saying that you necessarily have to have 5 women and 5 men, but you put more effort into encouraging people to apply that your board is lacking, and they will help that board understand things that 10 men won't understand.
And that I think is a perfectly fair point, that you want to encourage people from different backgrounds to apply, but then you want to appoint the best person who has applied on their merit rather than to meet a quota that you've been told to meet by your regulator.
Of course. I mean, have you been, I don't know whether MPs have to do this, maybe ministers had to, have you been on one of these diversity courses?
I went on a course, the House of Commons, which said not to throw your stapler at your parliamentary assistant.
Well, that's a very good idea.
Well, I've never been tempted to throw a stapler at my
parliamentary. We all believe in staple diets, but let's don't be
What about throwing it at the chief whip?
No, I went to one of these because all barristers have to do it. And this woman said, this woman said, look, we all know that Boris Johnson's government are all fascists, don't we? We all know that. And I thought, whoa, just a moment. No, this is not what it's all about. Microaggressions. we have tipped the other way. We don't want to go back to the 70s. We don't want to go back to the 80s. And you just look at the sort of the casual racialism that was there. We don't want that.
But you see, that's where I challenge what Michael and Narinder were saying, because I think society has fundamentally changed. I'd be astonished if there were an employer in the land who didn't want to employ the best people, particularly in financial services. And I absolutely accept that might not have been true, almost certainly wasn't true in 1970.
Or in 1980.
Or in 1980.
No.
But it now is, and therefore the FCA and the PRA, they're just a bit out of date.
Well, I agree with that.
The bus.
And they will find that many of the best people are, if not a majority of the best people, are women, and certainly many of the best people are from ethnic backgrounds, although there will be variations there, and something has to be done about. You have to think about how you're going to deal with that. So, in a way, they are a bit behind the times, and of course, a lot of this has got to work its way through, because it's only perhaps people in their 20s and 30s where there's been more fairness, and they're not yet chairman of the bank, as it were.
But you devalue the currency. You undermine women because you say she's only there because she's a woman. You undermine black people.
I agree with that.